Hello, everybody, and welcome to the PT on Ice Daily Show. My name is Christina Previtt. I am one of the two lead faculty for the Modern Management of the Older Adult Division. So welcome to Wednesday, Geri on Ice. If you remember, 2 weeks ago, I started a kind of section on management of Parkinson's. And in my video 2 weeks ago, I talked about really understanding some of the neuroanatomical underpinnings to why Parkinson's presents the way that it presents. And with a good understanding of what is happening from a pathophysiology perspective, we can often glean a lot of insight into what is happening when we're trying to rehab individuals with Parkinson's. Hey, Kelsey, how are you? So today I thought we would jump in a little bit into some of the research for programs, etc., for people who have Parkinson's. So right now we have actually a fairly large body of literature that is looking at the progression of Parkinson's with and without treatment. And oftentimes when we're characterizing individuals, we use different scales, which is talking about the severity of those four cardinal motor symptoms, including, bradykinesia and resting tremor, postural instability, shuffling gaits, freezing, all those types of things that are characteristic for individuals who are having very traditional types of Parkinson's. One of the really neat things is that we know that there's about a 2 to 7% progression of Parkinson's. That's not the neat part. The neat part is that people who continue to exercise show a marked delay in the development and progression of some of the motor symptoms of Parkinson's. So although at a neuroanatomical perspective, we are continuing to see some decline in regards to the number of substantia nigra neurons, some of the positive benefits in regards to blood flow, neurotrophic factor release, all these things are helping to delay the progression of motor symptoms in regards to disease progression, which I think is amazing. So what we know is at any stage of the diagnosis or progression of Parkinson's, that exercise is going to significantly and effectively mitigate the further progression of symptoms, and in some cases are going to increase motor function in regards to some of our outcome measures that are fairly well established in the geriatric population. So geriatric outcome measures, because Parkinson's is typically diagnosed at the age of 60 unless there's a genetic underlying factor which could create an early onset Parkinson's diagnosis. So what we know is, number one, exercise is going to help, which I feel like with people who are watching the ICE group and watching some of these podcasts, that they understand that we're a very fitness forward organization. So it's not a surprise there that we're going to be advocating for the type or to exercise. The second question becomes, what type of exercise should we be doing in order to optimize our function? And so there's actually a lot of research into different types of exercise programs, from the LSVT programs to dance programs, Tai Chi, aerobic, resistance training, and all actually have fairly substantial amounts of literature to support them. So the first thing that I'm gonna say in regards to exercising in rehab with Parkinson's, just like with anything else, is the exercise that a person does is going to be the most effective form of exercise, especially because we have a body of literature that shows that there are many different ways for us to help individuals with Parkinson's to mitigate some of their symptoms. And I think the exercise that a person likes, we know that exercise can improve quality of life, but especially if you're doing an exercise program that you really enjoy. Two of the programs that probably have the most research that are, I guess, a little bit unique in regards to being really advocated for in neurodegenerative conditions is the LSVT program and dancing. So I thought I would go over a little bit about what these two programs are. So LSVT is the Lee Silverman voice technique, and it actually started working with individuals with Parkinson's to try and actually with speech language pathologists to work on some of the lower voice issues that individuals with Parkinson's can have. I spoke a little bit about some of the non-motor presentation symptoms that people with Parkinson's can have. And one of them is, that low voice. And so this program was developed for speech language SLPs to be trying to get individuals with Parkinson's to enunciate and speak loudly. From there, it developed into the LSVT Big program. So you can become certified as an LSVT Big provider. And essentially what the program is doing is trying to exaggerate with upper extremity and lower extremity movements the amplitude of things that people are doing day to day. And by increasing the amplitude of these movements, the idea is to start helping with some of that bradykinesia shuffling gait and using that extra cognitive loading by thinking big with these big movements to try and add extra signaling into the basal ganglia to try and override some of those discrepancies in terms of exciting the excitatory pathway and losing that inhibition of the indirect pathway. So usually this protocol is actually extremely intensive. So it's 16 hours over 4 weeks is the original protocol, which is a lot, and from a funding perspective often is not going to be given unless you're maybe in an inpatient rehab setting or if you're doing something in a group. But individuals who are interested in the LSVT program can go through an online or in-person course that helps them learn the protocol. They're all protected by copyright, and therefore you would have to be a provider in order to have access. But thinking about doing things like a sit to stand with an exaggerated upper extremity movement is probably one of the best ways that you can conceptualize the way that this program is running, and that idea translates into things like walking, where even if you're just doing a community comfortable pace gait speed, you are going to be thinking big steps in order to try and avoid some of that shuffling gait that can contribute to a falls risk for an individual, especially with moderate to severe symptoms of Parkinson's. So that's the LSVT Big program, and it does have a lot of research to support it. There is a lot of people who have used that as a component of their exercise programming, and it often too discusses almost a style of teaching when it comes to individuals with Parkinson's that can help to mitigate some of their symptoms. The other one is dancing, and if you didn't know this about me, if you've taken our live course, you'll know. But I'm a certified Zumba instructor, and so the fact that I can dance with my clients is pretty amazing. And so there's a lot of things that dancing can really provide. The input from music changes the way the neurocircuitry works in our brain and can oftentimes really improve symptoms. We've seen this a lot also with Alzheimer's, where we have individuals, we play a piece of music that may be familiar to them, and they can almost start getting into some of their old memory systems, memory circuitry. So we're still trying to understand the mechanism behind it, but we know that dance can be one way for us to improve motor outputs. It's also a way for us to work on change of direction, balance strategies, following and leading, which is almost a little bit like perturbation or reactionary training. If you as the provider are the lead and the person that you are working with is following, if you're starting to change directions and they have to follow you, then sometimes it can be really beneficial from a balance perspective as well. So it's a great way for us to be trying to put a little flair and a little bit of fun into some of our exercise rehab protocols, and it actually has a lot of research to support it. The other two modalities that are more traditional and we would assume, I think, that would be beneficial is that both resistance training and aerobic training have benefits in regards to mitigating symptom progression and avoiding any progression of symptoms for individuals with Parkinson's. And the thing that's interesting sometimes in the literature is that we have some of these longitudinal studies that have followed people over several years. And because this is a degenerative condition, what we are looking for sometimes is a maintenance of function. And I think sometimes as a PT, that can be really hard for me to, grasp. We are going to see an initial learning effect. If we have an individual who is deconditioned, we're going to see an improvement in some of our outcome measures as a consequence of a strengthening effect. But from a long-term perspective, if we see people who are maintaining their gait speed for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, especially in light of having something like a neurodegenerative condition. I would argue in a geriatric population that maintenance of function can sometimes be a very, very admirable and important goal as well. But especially in the light of something like Parkinson's, that maintenance of function is going to be extremely important. We know that individuals now, especially with some of the optimization and changes in medical management outside of just levodopa and carbidopa, which is a first-line treatment for Parkinson's, we now have different types of treatment where when levodopa and carbidopa start having these fluctuations on-off times, which tend to happen about 5 years after the start of treatment, that now we have these alternative types of medical strategies that people can be living with Parkinson's disease for 10, 20, 25 years. And so if we can maintain their function for as long as possible, that is going to create such a huge difference in regards to quality of life, feeling like they are managing well with their condition, that if we can give them a program that works for them, that applies a lot of the principles like progressive overload and all of those things that we talk about across all of our divisions, then we also put a lot of control into the person's hands, where sometimes the idea of having something that's just going to get worse can be really, really tough from a psychological and mental health perspective. And so that is one way that as a therapist, we have all this research to say, okay, well, what do you like to do? Maybe we can start, if we're in kind of this utopian optimal situation, let's start with the LSVTP, our VT program. Let's try and give you some strategies when you're starting to experience higher symptom load. So those dyskinesias get higher. Let's give you some strategies for you to still go about your day. Then what is some exercise strategies that you enjoy doing? Because this is a long-term thing. We need you to keep exercising to the point now that many clinical practice guidelines, CPGs, and protocols and interventions and systematic reviews for the management, complete management of Parkinson's and now Alzheimer's as well, has exercise as a very important component of managing, just as much as some of the medical treatments like the pharmacological interventions, because we know that there is so much power in movement in regards to managing some of these symptoms. And if we are I just think that is such a great way for us to be advocating for our client. And so the comparison that I make is as in pharmacological treatment of blood pressure. So I say to my clients, if you have high blood pressure, you are expected to take your medication every single day. If you do not, what happens? And they obviously tell me that their blood pressure will continue to rise. I was saying to them that in management and rehab, we understand that exercise is an important part of your management strategy. You know that when you exercise, you feel better, your muscles are stronger, and you can do more. If we stop exercising, it is analogous to stopping taking our blood pressure medications, and we could potentially lose some of that strength that we have gained. And so trying to set up those conversations where exercise is a long-term intervention and it's something just as important as taking some of our medications can be a great way for us to help and set up the good situation with our clients that, exercise is a lifelong journey, especially in the light of things like Parkinson's disease or other neurodegenerative conditions, and that we are a provider that can help you manage different changes and fluctuations in your symptoms as they arrive. Because unfortunately, in an amazing world, we would not have any decline in symptoms, but unfortunately in some of these neuro conditions, we are going to see a slide, and then that might be where a client can come back and say, okay, this was working for me for a while, but now because of this development, I need to figure out something else. And then we as movement experts can start thinking about different ways that we can modify to hopefully optimize the exercise that our client loves to do, or give them other strategies for them to continue to be moving and active. So I hope you guys found that helpful. If you have any other questions or have tried any other programs, I know there's a lot out there. There's not enough time for me to cover all of them in a 15-minute podcast. I would love you to comment below. If you are working with individuals with Parkinson's, what are some of the best strategies that you have seen for working with this population? And what have you seen work long-term if you've had the opportunity for you to be able to follow these people over time? All right, that is it for today. This Canadian is wishing all of you a happy Thanksgiving tomorrow. Fun fact, Black Friday was not actually a thing in Canada until about 5 years ago, when a bunch of retailers in Canada realized that a bunch of Canadians were going over the border and doing most of their shopping for Christmas in the US, and therefore they created a whole bunch of Black Friday sales. In Canada, we have Boxing Day, which when I mentioned Boxing Day to some of our faculty, I got like this side glance. So Boxing Day is after Christmas. After Christmas is like the presents that you didn't get. Here's a whole bunch of sales so that you can, spend some additional money after the holidays. So I'm going to hopefully be on the podcast on the 26th so that I can wish you all a happy Boxing Day, especially because a good portion of our podcast listeners are from the US. Alrighty, have a wonderful Thanksgiving. I hope you guys spend a lot of time with loved ones, eat too much, and just, have a good long weekend, rest and relax. And I will actually see you on Friday when I switch hats and come on the Fitness Athlete Friday segment in regards to pregnancy and postpartum. All right, have a wonderful, wonderful week, and I'll see you on Friday. Bye.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the PT on Ice Daily Show. If you enjoyed this content, head on over to iTunes and leave us a review. And be sure to check us out on Facebook and Instagram at the Institute of Clinical Excellence. If you're interested in getting plugged into more ICE content on a weekly basis while earning CEUs from home, check out our virtual ICE online mentorship program at ptonice.com. While you're there, sign up for our Hump Day Hustling newsletter for a free email every Wednesday morning with our top 5 research articles and social media posts that we think are worth reading. Head over to ptonice.com and scroll to the bottom of the page to sign up.